Representative Miller coming to the table.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
All right, members, as you know, special order of business. First up is going to be Representative Ballinger's House Bill. Is that 1343?
No, 1177.
I'm sorry, House Bill 1177. And you are recognized to explain your bill, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you all coming and being here. We're going to try to keep it as short as possible because I know there's some other bills that are running, and we're going to try to make sure that we're mindful of their time. This bill is actually one that I think is fun for me to get to run. It seems like so much of what I've been dealing with is so intense, and I like this. This is fun. This is a good bipartisan bill with the support of some of you all as co-sponsors, and I appreciate that. And frankly, what attracted me to this is it's a group of people who don't have a lobby, don't have a big industry that's got a lot of money that's backing them, but what it is just people who want to go to work and make a little money, take care of themselves, and right now the state is in their way of doing that. And so there's a lawsuit that's going on, started in June in federal court, that is now stayed pending the getting some sort of resolution from the legislature or the end of the legislative session. What would happen is if we don't pass something to fix it, then at the end of the legislative session they proceed with the lawsuit. And Paul Avalar with the Institute for Justice, who's the attorney for the Braiders, may explain it to you, but they've been very successful in winning their lawsuits, and I'd say since our requirements are pretty high, they're going to win this lawsuit. And then what will happen is we'll have to come back and try to figure out how we're going to fix it. So if we fix it now, we get out of the lawsuit's dismissed, and we're able to just move on. And oh, by the way, some people who just want to work, carry out their arts and their trade will be able to do it. If you all want to look at it, I'm going to try to go over the bill real quick. It is 1177 on your tablets. And there's two parts of this bill. There's essentially two ways that you can legally braid hair in Arkansas. If we pass this, it goes in effect. There's two ways you can legally braid hair in Arkansas. One is if you want to just go out and braid hair, then the state's not going to have anything to do with it. We say that this is a trade that's not inherently dangerous. It's not something that is likely to cause harm, at least not more than the person who's a fast food worker, or the person who works in the grocery store, or the person who works at mowing your lawn. We're going to say that this is one trade that we're not going to license, and this one art we're not going to license. And so there's two ways that's that way. Well, if someone wanted to get a certification, if they say, I want to volunteer to be regulated by the state, then they can do that. And what this was inserted. I met with the Cosmetology Technical Board, and this is basically kind of a compromise. It doesn't get their support on the board on this bill, but it was made it where their opposition they wouldn't oppose the bill. And so what it did is it creates a second way. If they want to be certified, they can either be grandfathered in, or they can go through the testing process and actually be grandfathered into, and actually be certified by the state. So two different things. Great. But anyway, I'll open it up to questions.
During an explanation, I'd like to ask the first question. I want to get to and I know so very little about this. I've been to the same barber shop for 3 generations in Yellville. I've never had a good haircut yet, but I know I'm going to. When it comes to, I see in here that extensions, the use of natural or synthetic hair extensions would be exempt, right, under your bill?
Yes,
they would be able to do those.
As they do in braiding, depending on the client and what they're looking for, a lot of times they will actually braid in either natural or synthetic hair.
So they braid them in, they don't necessarily sew them in. I mean, again, this is just one of the few things I've heard that concerns people. Maybe you might explain that.
Sure. Well, and I'm a lot more of an expert on hair braiding than I ever thought I would be. But I'm really not. The issue is, what they will do is they'll actually take and they'll braid the hair in. So let me go over this is oddly fascinating to me. But what they'll do is they'll braid the hair into like cornrows, and then they'll actually weave in, if the person's hair is not long enough, they'll actually weave in hair into that. And so I don't know if it's all by hand or if they sew it into their natural hair. But honestly, to hear it described, it's an art. I mean, it's really pretty of a neat process.
Okay, members, Representative Love, you recognized for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Ballinger, now, in this bill, the hair braiders are not perming, coloring, doing anything to the hair, are they?
That's right. That would put them under cosmetology, and if they did do that, they'd be practicing cosmetology without a license. This bill doesn't allow for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Motion at the proper time.
Yes, sir. We Representative Payton, you're recognized for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Ballinger, do we license barbers, and if so, how is this different than what a barber does?
We do license barbers, and of course I'm not an expert on what that all requires, so I can't give you detail. But a barber has the ability to cut hair. A barber, the licensed barber, can shave, can do a lot of other things. I don't know if they can do the perming and all that type of stuff as a licensed barber or not. But how this is different is we're not talking about shaving. We're not even talking about cutting hair unless it's incidental to doing the braiding. So they may have to snip off the end or something like that. But we're not talking about cutting hair. All we're talking about is the act of braiding hair.
10 members, we have some people signed up to speak for and against, and Representative Ballinger, you mentioned Mr. Avalar, so we might bring him to the table first. He's here to speak for the bill. What you do?
My name is Paul Avalar. I'm an attorney with the Institute for Justice. I am currently representing Arkansas hair braiders in a lawsuit against the state of Arkansas over its current regulatory practices for hair braiders.
Okay, thanks, sir. You're recognized again.
Thank you, sir. Arkansas should not require a license for something as safe and common as braiding hair. And it certainly should not require 1,500 hours of training that does not teach or test braiding, but does require hundreds of hours of instruction that is completely unrelated to braiding at a cost of thousands of dollars. Nevertheless, this is what Arkansas does today. Natural hair braiding uses no dyes, no chemicals, no cutting of hair. It is safe for braiders, it is safe for their customers. The legislation that Representative Ballinger has proposed would bring a quick and efficient end to the lawsuit that we have brought. And I would note that states that have gone similarly to a license-free scheme, mostly following Institute for Justice lawsuits, have not reported any problems with braiding. Braiding, again, is safe. The questions that were raised earlier about the use of extensions. Braiders do braid in extensions. They sometimes sew in extensions to a person's natural hair. What they don't do is use chemicals. There are some braiding, there are some processes of doing hair extensions that use chemical bonding or glues. Those are expressly not included in this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Ballinger and Mr. Avalar, my question would be, I've heard a lot from hairdressers and folks in that community from my district that seem to have some concern with the sanitary aspect of this. How would you address those concerns?
Thank you, Representative Miller. I think, again, it's worth noting that those states that do not have a license for braiding hair have not reported any of those concerns. And some states that do license hair have gone back and done studies of the licensing program. For example, a couple of years ago, the state of Colorado did a review of complaints against braiders. And what it found was that over a 3-year period, there had been exactly 3 complaints against braiders for any reason whatsoever. The idea that braiders are operating not sanatorially it's simply not proven. And in fact, today, when braiders are often cited for braiding without a license, in many instances, the inspectors note that the shops that they're operating in are perfectly sanitary, perfectly clean. There's no evidence that a license, that's certainly not one that requires 1,500 hours, is necessary for braiders to practice what are some pretty commonsensical practices of washing their hands and cleaning combs.
Studies that have been done as to the effects of braiding and extensions on the hair. Primarily in the African American communities, there is a disorder that we call CCA, which is a central fungus type of infection that is primarily associated with women of color. And this actual process of doing the braids. When you braid this braid in, it's very tight to the scalp. It pulls on the follicle, and it sometimes causes permanent hair loss. A lot of women of color are predispositioned for keloid type skin. It causes scarring down in the follicle, and permanent hair loss. I consider this a significant health and safety issue. Then we have safety and sanitation. Simple things like cleaning and sanitizing, disinfecting your implements with an EPA registered disinfectant, which every cosmetologist and barber in the state is regulated to do. To say that they need to be regulated with $1,500, I disagree. They don't need that much. A lot of what they do is an art. I agree. It is an art. But we've gone from braiding of natural hair over into adding extensions with synthetic or human hair or a mixture thereof, because there are many types of hair that you can use. The rubbing on the hair, the scalp, causes some issues. Then I have an issue with deregulating hair braiders and consumer issues. Customers, regardless of where they're going, if they're receiving a service, they deserve to be protected. They deserve to have an avenue for their redress if they do have a complaint. They deserve to know what they're getting and the damage or not of what they're going to get. I think that's just pretty much for everyone, regardless of where we're going and what services we're having done. If I go into a barbershop and get a haircut, I want to know that those implements are clean. If I have an issue, I'd like to be able to look up on the wall and see that person's name so that I could file a complaint. When we deregulate and we set a scope of practice, then if we're deregulating them and they can only perform certain tasks, who's going to go in and inspect and to find out if they are doing color, if they are doing relaxers? When you talk about adding extensions through the method of a sewing and weaving, that hair comes on a weft. And once it's placed in all around the head systematically, and it is an art, it has to be cut into a hairstyle. That goes into barbering and cosmetology alike. When we talk about shampooing in braid salons that are deregulated, you have some public and safety issues with this N9 backflow valve. We have a regulation that we have as cosmetologists with the shampoo bowls that's mandated through plumbing codes for the state of Arkansas. In this bill, 1172, it proposes that they should also be able to shampoo. We have to consider many things. And when we were drawing up our legislation, we considered those things. We tried to be as proactive and reactive with our legislation. And I'm just going to ask you today, please consider and allow our legislation to come through before you make a decision on this issue. Give us a fair chance. We've worked on this for 3 long years, working with the braiders, working with Mr. Avalar, prior to the lawsuit ever being filed. It was finalized. We just want the opportunity to get our legislation through that is proactive and reactive.
Representative McGee, you recognize.
As a physician, could you comment further for the committee about what keloid actually does in African Americans? Because that's a very significant problem.
Keloiding actually causes scarring deep down in the tissue in the dermis part of the skin, where it actually will close off hair follicles if it's in an area where there's a hair follicle. Some black women, and the majority of what you will see will be the big huge knots and the scarring over a tissue, sometimes causing big balls. And it's very prevalent.
And then also it can be very disfiguring.
Yes, sir, it can. Yes. And so can, if I may add, the braids and the different studies that have been done on the braids, the braiding of natural hair by itself does not pose a lot of issues to the consumer. But when you begin to tie in these extra weight on the hair, I would liken it to a small branch trying to hold a sandbag. I mean, that's what you're doing to the follicle and the hair strand. Then you have to take into consideration a lot of the consumers that go to braid shops have chemically relaxed hair, either with color or the hydrogen, the sodium hydroxide relaxers. which puts the hair in a much more fragile state. And I understand that braiders do not do chemicals, but at least if they're going to work on heads, some knowledge of what they're working on will be beneficial to them so that they can stay in business and to the consumer. And it's been noted in a lot of these research papers that there is a receding of the hairline 2 to 3 inches back because of the tightness of the braids and the damage done to the hair follicles. And all these things you can read in the dermatology journals.
Representative Love, you're recognized for question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Ford, did you all meet with Representative Ballinger?
We did, sir.
Did Representative Ballinger include some of the comments or some of the pieces in your legislative package?
He did. He took some of our verbiage out, and he also added at the bottom what our proposal would be at the bottom. My problem is that he's giving them a choice to be regulated. I think that when you look at regulation and why you should regulate, you should only regulate a profession when there's an actual consumer protection issue, and also when there are issues with customer redress and the health and safety issues. And I actually...
How many consumer complaints do you have recorded here in Arkansas? As a result of hair braiding, how many consumer complaints?
I can't tell you that definite number. I work on the CTAC. I don't work in the office. We have an office within the Department of Health. So sometimes those complaints don't even come to cosmetology. They go directly to the health department. And when I spoke with Mr. Ballinger, he said that those complaints could be directly toward the Attorney General office, or they could file a lawsuit against the braiders. Well, I don't want lawsuits filed against them because that would put a hairdresser out of business.
Is there anyone here from the Arkansas Department of Health that can answer how many issues or instances in which we have
Mr. Breck is here. Are you prepared for that, or would you like to maybe... if you could maybe find out, we'll bring you to the table later for Representative Love's question. That'd be all right, Mr. Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Representative Sullivan, you're recognized for a question.
Yes, ma'am. You cited several studies where the person had a negative impact or an adverse impact from this. Were those the adverse impacts the result of non-licensed hair braiders?
It just was a study over women, and it did not, the actual study came from 361 women. 60% of those women had had braids done. It did not say where the braids were done, but the actual braiding with the extensions done.
Okay, so it's possible that those could have resulted, all those adverse results could have resulted from licensed participants.
Very well.
Okay, thank you.
Nivea Earl is here to speak for the bill.
My name is Nivea Earl Thornton. I'm a braider in Jacksonville. I'm the owner of TWISTYKINKS Natural Hair and Braiding. My testimony is that we are braiders. We're not using any chemicals on our clients. We're just braiding hair.
Are you currently licensed? Have you gone through the cosmetology? And are you currently licensed, I guess, cosmetologist? I'm not sure what
No, I am not a licensed cosmetologist. I am just a braider. I would like the right to be able to work. I am not hurting anybody by simply braiding their hair.
Representative Love, you're recognized for a question.
You've been in business braiding hair for 16 years, and you do not have, you said you do not have the cosmetology license?
That's correct. I do not have a cosmetology license.
So is it currently under our state law or regulation, whatever, is it legal for you to be in business?
Braiding is a part of our culture. It is something that we are taught. And what you're telling me is that I cannot braid hair because it wasn't taught in cosmetology school, that I have to have a cosmetology license in order to braid hair. But we have to remember that is something that they do not teach, okay? So for me to be a braider, and if that's something that my mom taught me or a friend or something taught me, you're telling me that I can't do that. It's not anything wrong with my work, but I'm not able to do that because I don't have a cosmetology license. I don't think that I should have to have a cosmetology license because I'm going to school for something that they don't teach. How are you going to teach me something that I already know how to do?
Right. Well, I'm just trying to get it figured out. If this is, I mean, I don't have a, like I say, my main question is just, is it legal right now for someone to be doing what you're doing? I don't have a problem.
It is not legal currently. That is why we're here today, so that we can get it legal.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Love?
I wanted to follow up on Mr. Miller. Are you, because this is a question, were you asking her if she had a business license or was it regulated by cosmetology? Because I mean, it's my understanding you would have a business license.
I do have a business license. I have a business license and a tax ID number as well.
Okay. But is that what you're saying? Does she have a business license? Because I was concerned about the same thing.
I mean, no, my main question is just, I'm just trying to figure out, is it actually legal to have a business that does this hair braiding currently right now in the state, and the way our system is set up? That was my main question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Representative Payton. Yes, sir, you're recognized.
Well, they almost asked my question for me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in the 16 years, you currently have a storefront, I guess, if you have a city occupation business license. How long have you had the storefront?
I've had the storefront for the past year.
For the past year. Has anybody from the state or a state agency tried to shut you down or tell you can't operate?
No, sir.
Okay. So, do you feel like in the absence of this legislation passing that you would have to shut down, or do you feel like you could continue to operate?
I think that if this bill is not passed, it would be something that would cause me to have to shut down my business. I'm not trying to harm anyone. I just want to contribute to my society like any other entrepreneur. I want to be able to run my business legitimately without the interference of cosmetology. So if this bill is not passed, that allows the Cosmetology Board the opportunity to interfere with my services and to continue looking at me as a target instead of looking at me as an entrepreneur offering a service.
Well, I certainly appreciate your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, thank you, Ms. Earl. We're gonna if you would briefly get your question, if you would keep your mic and tell us your question again. I've got an answer, but Mr. Breck is here. He can answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Breck, I just wanted to ask, how many instances in which, as a result of hair braiding, how many, I guess, adverse actions has the health department received? I guess you can tell me in the last year or 5 years ago.
Thank you. Robert Breck with the Health Department. There have been 2 complaints since 2011. I could also answer the question about whether or not they can operate legally. Once the lawsuit was filed, there was a conscious decision made not to enforce that portion of the law until that lawsuit was either completed or there was some action taken by the legislature. So that should answer both those questions. Two complaints since 2011.
Well, I'll ask you this, Mr. Breck. If there is, and because I know that AEH is governs cosmetology.
Arkansas Department of Health. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Arkansas Department of Health governs cosmetology. If there is no, I mean, because I'm a little concerned with our last testimony.
Either if they wanted to call themselves certified, they could go through that avenue, or they could do it without going through that avenue. But we would not file our bill until his is either not passed. If it does pass, we will not file our bill.
Now, does the Arkansas Department of Health oppose Representative Ballinger's bill?
We do not. I mean, we do feel that there are some concerns, obviously, but not at a high enough level to oppose this bill. No.
Thank you, Mr. Breck. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Breck. And just remind everybody, you're fine. And Representative Love, I know what you're saying, but also know kind of how it came across a little bit. We are the ones that wrote the legislation they're following. So when we're saying, this is silly for the Department of Health to do, we're the ones telling them to do it. So